I'm Chadwick Boseman. I am an artist. I, People call me an actor. I wouldn't necessarily call myself an actor. I would call myself an artist.
I'm going to start with when we last saw your character in Civil War. He had become the new king of Wakanda after his father is killed. He goes on, is bent for revenge. He's poised to join the Avengers. And you've described that as he starts out as the anti-hero. So can you talk about the journey that you're now about to take him on from being this anti-hero in this new film? What do you think of this character? What's the journey you're taking him on?
I think I wouldn't say that the anti-hero aspect of the character is gone. We talked about before, he has the attributes of a hero, but it's difficult decisions, difficult choices. Sometimes there's no right answer. You know what I mean? I felt like in this particular, everybody has sort of heard the line, it's hard for a good man to be king. And so I think there's an aspect of, as much as he's a superhero, it's like the Godfather, you know what I'm saying? It's him learning what it means to take on rulership and take on the throne. And sometimes you have to do bad things, or you maybe need to do bad things so that there's justice, so that there's peace, and it's not any clear-cut decisions. Like, if, for instance, Wakanda has existed the way it is, partially because it kept people outside. Now, do you at this point allow people to come inside? That's a difficult decision, because it's part of your identity to a certain degree. So I think the anti-hero is there. The hero is definitely there because he's a superhero. But, that's the journey. He's a super anti-hero.
What do you like about him? What do you like about this character?
I love that he thinks about other people. He thinks about himself. I don't think he's the type of person that, to a fault, thinks about other people more than he thinks about himself, because that could be a bad thing too. But I think he's not afraid to hear wise counsel. He's not afraid. I think there is some fear of being wrong, actually. That's there. But I identify with that. I identify with his plight, his personality. And I love him because he's, there's just the fantasy of playing a ruler. You never get to do that. You never get to explore what that is. And so it's fun doing that at the same time. It's fun having power and having say in what happens to the people around you. And so I think that's why I love that he cares too.
You've played some very remarkable men in history. 42, Jackie Robinson, James Brown. We're about to see you as Thurgood Marshall's civil rights legend. All very strong, confident, trailblazing men. And I just wonder, where does Black Panther fit in that character? We talked about this briefly yesterday, if there was a progression of how you take these roles, and you told me it's just about choices and time, but you've played people who have a lot in common, actually, even though they're completely, Thurgood Marshall, James Brown, very different in what their contribution to society and history is. So where does Black Panther as a character fit in among these other very interesting men you've played?
Well, I haven't planned anything. It's a blessing to be in this position. It's a blessing to have played. If I had only played Jackie Robinson, I would be, happy about that. And I think some of it is They're like some oh my gosh moments. Like Jackie Robinson's an oh my gosh moment. Black Panther is a oh my gosh, I get to play that. I think James Brown and Thurgood Marshall were two things that I didn't see as clearly when they first came to me. There was no question about the other two, but I think when I was approached to do it, those two, I said no initially. So I can't take credit for it because I couldn't see that path. I had to have some people that I respect push me beyond my boundaries, and I think that's sort of what it's about. It's not about the characters as much as it's about you want to spend time doing something that is worth it. Like if you're going to put as much as you put into doing a role and take away from the other parts of your life, you want to spend that time doing things that mean something. And so I think the through line is not the characters, it's what it takes me through. What challenge does it bring to me? Whether I can do it or not, I should at least be pushing my own boundaries. So
let's just talk about something we talked about yesterday as well. Why you think this is a good moment in history for this movie to be made? And we talked about the kinds of movies. Black Panther is notable for being the first Black superhero to make it into mainstream comics. And we were talking yesterday about how, for a lot of kids, Black President Obama, that's all they know, and that the time is right. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the funny thing about it is when you initially hear that they're doing the movie at all, like take myself out of it, that it's happening, I think it's like, huh, really? If you know what it is that gonna work? Are people gonna receive it? Who's gonna go see it? So I think I wasn't sure if it was the right time. It was just the challenge that I needed. And I knew I have to do this regardless of how people receive it, or, if it's the lowest grossing Marvel movie ever, for whatever reason, because that's where the world is, then I just have to give credit to Marvel and for doing that anyway. But what's been surprising is that everybody is excited about it. That I haven't met one person who was like, man, I want to go see that Black Panther movie. And I think we love things that we wish they had already happened. In a perfect world, like this would have already happened. Like it would be no question, there would be no boundaries, no reasons for this to not have happened before. So I think when you see a moment like this, what's special about it is that we're all dreaming the same dream. We all want the world to be at a place where it's possible. And so, I said it when we I guess did the written interview or whatever. People celebrated when Obama got elected. Like it's people that voted against him that still celebrated. Like, because they were like, oh, I see what this means now. And so I think it's a similar thing. Like, I hope the movie can live up to that. I pray it can live up to that. But, and I hope it exceeds it, actually.
Were you a Black Panther comic book fan when you were a kid? Everyone wants to know your influences.
Not when I was a kid. And unfortunately, for some reason, that didn't come into my sphere, to my domain at that time. Whether it was because I just didn't meet the right person, or it just wasn't available in my surroundings. But in college, that's when I first was put on to Black Panther. So I had seen it pop up a few times. And even before I got the role, there was the idea I would love to play that one day. What would that look like? Because sometimes you need to visualize the things you want to come. And so it's weird because it's something that I dreamed about before it came, something I saw signs of coming before it came. But it wasn't something that I had since I was a kid, no.
But you've read a bunch of the comic books.
I probably have read, there's very few that I haven't read, yeah.
And, the nerds at CNET want to know, like, Priest, Hudlin, Coates, like what?
Who's my favorite? Come on, man.
Who's influenced?
I know these people. I can't say I like his more than his. I can't choose. Not just because I think one is better and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I don't think you can, because they all sort of, what's lovely about it, right, is I don't think you have in Black Panther as much the idea of somebody did this character this way. The only thing I can think of that would be that is maybe the interpretation of the Dora Milaje. There's a difference between Coates and Priest, but and that has to do with how we see women. We see women in a much more powerful way, and it's just a progression. That it's not saying one is better than the other one. I like the other one, but and then there's the aspect of even the hair, the idea that they would have. You see the bald hair that's adapted from Coates' version. In Christopher Priest's version, they have straight hair. They have, they're permed out. Even though they're from Africa, he's like, you see these women, they have these European, a European context of beauty. And so I wouldn't say that one is better than the other. It's just each one builds off the next. It's where we are, the comedic element happens in a different way in Stan Lee and Dan Kirby's version than it does in the Christopher Priest version. The Hudlin version, I feel like, is not as comedic, even though he's a comedic director.
Yeah.
He did the House Party movies. He did Boomerang, as we talked about. So it's interesting that he chose a very powerful and strong Panther who didn't get beat as much to, I don't know if it's to offset, but in Priest versions, he's more like, he takes an L, he takes losses to win a lot of times, which is a very interesting strategy. He's a ninja in Priest's version. He's like a knight in Hudlin's version. He's more adventurous, I think, in Stanley and Kirby's version. But I think I would rather compare it and say that one is better. That's what I'm trying to do.
The authenticity that you were talking about yesterday was also about the voice that you brought and the trying to get an accent for the character that was not based in British or French accents. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that was important?
Even the idea to, it's interesting to have to consider it in this instance. I think that's part of the story too, is that people think about how race has affected the world. It's not just in the States. Colonialism is the cousin of slavery, So colonialism in Africa would have it that in order to be a ruler of this type, some people would think, oh yeah, he went and studied in Europe, so therefore his education comes from Europe. And I wanted to be completely sure that we didn't convey that idea, because that would be counter everything that Wakanda is about. If Wakanda is supposed to be the most technologically advanced nation on the planet, if it's supposed to have never been conquered, which means that advancement has happened without colonialism tainting it, poisoning the well of it, without stopping it or disrupting it, then that would mean there's nowhere in the world he would speak with a European accent. If I did that, I would be conveying a white supremacist idea of what being educated is, and what being, royal or presidential or whatever that is, because it's not just about, in this particular superhero, it's not just about him running around fighting, coming in mysteriously to save the day, or even being part of a team. He's the ruler of a nation. And if he's the ruler of a nation, there's certain moments when he has to speak to his people, he has to galvanize to his people, and there's no way I could speak to my people who have never been conquered by Europeans with the European voice. So.
You also said that the story has a lot of relevance with what's going on in the world today, because a big part of this story is about what happens when you get power. What do you do with it, right? That's the question as well that you face as the leader of Wakanda.
Yeah, well, I feel like all superhero movies are about that, ultimately. It's just the level of magic and otherworldliness that is different, but all superhero movies are about a person who has extreme power in some, whether they're super fast, or they can disappear, they do tricks, or they can jump really high, or they can zap something and make it explode. Whatever it is, that's power. That's an ability that gives them an advantage. And so having that power, the only difference between a hero and a superhero and the villain is that the villain chooses to use that power in a way that is selfish and hurts other people. So this movie is that, but it's also it shows you the political power as well. What do you do when you do have access to all the resources? When you do give, I decide whether you are in this position or that position, and that affects your family this way, or as we talked about, who do you allow to be in the country at all? So who controls the borders? Who controls zoning? Who controls all those different things that we see in our world today? We're seeing people with power and the abuse of power. So it's similar, but it's both sides of it.
Your sister in this movie, talking about women in tech, you said it's going to change the perception that people might have, or present it in a way that
she's the Tony Stark in the movie. I mean, she's witty, she's cool, she's funny. And I loved. I read with some of the people that ended up with roles, and she was one of the roles that I had to read with, right? And speaking of Letitia, the actress, and I think people are gonna really, really love her, just love her as a person, and that comes through in the character, like it comes through. So I think one, it's not just the role itself; it's who's playing a role, and I feel like the idea that and this is also, I think, the development of the writers, is the idea that Wakanda was was so advanced was something that was always there. But I think the development of Shuri is like that character. It gives it an identity, like, and the writers over time have come. Like, I may know that this is part of Wakanda, but to give it a character and make this character be the person that's something that the movie has found out. I think is it continues the process of what the story is. So yeah, I think, you'll see whatever gadgets they are, whatever the character comes through. Now mind you, T'Challa is smart too, and he's good in science too, but she's the whiz kid. That's still part of the old of the way the story's been told forever, is that T'Challa is technologically sound. He's a scientist as well, but she's the person in control of that in our cabinet. She's the minister of technology.
Totally cool. Okay, I just wanted to ask you the last question. We talked about how you use tech and what you think of tech, and you told me a very funny story about self-driving cars and smart houses, what you like and you wouldn't like.
Right. Well, I mean, you don't want your house to be so smart that it locks you out. Joking. But you can no longer enter the premises. That would be crazy, right? But yeah, I like the idea of a car, right now I'm doing so much that I try not to drive as much as I can, because I don't want to be tired on the road. So the idea that if I had a car that doesn't move, because I'm asleep, or can detect that, or can save my life, which, people fall asleep at the wheel all the time, right? So the idea that it won't move forward because it detects another car, that's an amazing thing. That makes the world a better place. Or even just simple stuff like, you get too close to something and your car can sense that, and it gives you a little beep and let you know that. Or, a lot of people have that in their car now. That's technology. You even Uber, the fact that we have an app now, sorry taxi drivers, but that you have an app that makes you go, oh, I can just call that on my phone. I don't have to call a taxi. Nobody's got to call a taxi for me if I'm drunk at the bar. I just call an Uber. I didn't drive anyway because I knew I was calling an Uber. Let me stop talking about Uber. Lyft. Lyft. And if you got that.
But you don't want a self-driving car. You still want to drive when you want to drive.
I want to drive when I want to drive, yeah. But all that's technology.